Hi, I'm Franco Luna Puma Podcast. You're listening to Teka Teka News, balitang thinking, hindi breaking. In this episode,
It's really all about investing that money in assets that will appreciate over time. They're investing that money in assets that will give them recurring income. Like that could be in bonds, government securities, time deposit, or even buying a stock, which gives dividends.
we'll pick the brains of someone who used to help manage funds for the country's largest bank. If you're anything like me, you're quite apprehensive about how to invest your hard-earned money. And yet you know that with inflation so high these days, it doesn't pay to just leave your money at the bank anymore. It has to grow. But with so many options out there, not to mention scams, where does one even begin?
Typically, for conservative people who cannot afford to lose money, the only way that you can invest and you can sleep comfortably is buy government securities.
That's veteran market analyst Jonathan Navelas, or Jonas. He used to be the chief strategist at BDO and was once named among the most accurate forecasters in the world. Jonas is now managing director at e-management for business and marketing services. During a recession, central banks often lower interest rates to stimulate the economy. Jonas says this can make bonds and other fixed income investments more attractive since they offer a steady stream of income.
When you go to a bank with 10,000 pesos, time deposit nila 0.625 lang. Talo ka na agad. You buy a bond, let's say a government bond, 7 years. Kung may 10,000 ka, makakabili ka and it can fetch at least 6.5% every year for 10 years. Masaya ka na doon, di ba? Yun yung isang shortcut.
Now, if you feel like venturing into stocks, Jonas' most basic tip is this. Look for investments that are considered defensive. So these are companies whose services are needed even during a recession.
You just have to think of things that you spend on. And I will always go for companies that have good profitability and eventually gives good dividends. When I say dividends, they give a portion of their income to their shareholders yearly. So they're very few, no? A good example of this are telco companies like PLDT and Globe. Another one is utility companies like Meralco. So if you go for those what people call blue chip stocks, like the three I mentioned, you're okay. You're buying a company, and every year they provide an interest of between 5 to 6%.
Cyclical stocks are the opposite of defensive stocks. Think of things related to discretionary spending like travel and entertainment. These are the ones that really suffer during a downturn.
What are the sectors that will drive the Philippine economy? Food, retail, construction, and real estate are the main sectors that will still drive the economy 5 years to 10 years down the road. As long as you know what you're doing, you don't have to go far. You go to the supermarket, tingnan mo yung mga binibili mo or restaurants that you patronize. Sino ba may-ari niyan? Are they listed? So makikita mo, the more you use them, then dapat doon ka nag-i-invest. So for practicality sake, if you live in Metro Manila, syempre gumagamit ka ng Meralco, di, dapat may Meralco ka. Kung ang tubig mo, Manila water galing, o dapat Manila water meron ka. That is a very simple approach.
The International Monetary Fund has been warning of a global recession on the horizon. That's because the US and some European economies have begun slowing down. But when it comes to the Philippines, Jonas actually remains optimistic.
Over the 5-10 year horizon, the Philippines is actually in a better shape for a recovery. I think over a 10-year period, most likely we will be growing at around 7%. Sad to say that over the next 1 to 2 years, 2023 to 2024, we're looking at a decelerating growth rate. If you look at that peak, because of the concerns over a recession in the global markets, no, may drag sa atin yan, as well as the inflationary condition. Earlier, I said that third quarter GDP was 7.6, then we became 7.2.
We're pausing for a quick break now. When we return, should you be getting into NFTs and cryptocurrency? Jonas Revelas, a well-respected market strategist, has a few more tips for those investing for the first time. Do your research and keep abreast of market trends. First, he says, look for companies with a history of weathering economic downturns or companies with the potential to survive a recession.
Imagine if you were with somebody, di ba? A random person. Hawakan mo yung tenga, di ba? Alam mo yung mangyayari, di ba? He's going to hit you. That's something that I keep telling investors. So, once you know the nature, dapat sabayan mo yon. The market is a cycle. You need to be able to ride that cycle.
So what about the NFTs and cryptocurrency? It seems it's all the rage now.
If you're going to invest in these assets, make sure that you're prepared to lose them. When you talk about cryptos, it talks about an asset that is backed by something tangible. In crypto, there's actually none. The only thing that it tells you is that these assets are validated by the internet.
One good example is the play-to-earn movement. At one point, we were described as the epicenter of play-to-earn, with thousands of Filipino players flocking to games like Axie Infinity and making real money. But then it all came crashing down.
The problem is there's really no asset backing it up. Unlike when we talk about bonds, there's an underlying value. It's the debt of the Republic of the Philippines. That's principal guaranteed. If you talk about a company in the stock market, the assets of the company is the backup of your shares. But in a crypto, wala. You also have to remember NFTs and cryptos came in the last decade, just after 2007. Hindi mo alam ano yung reaction ng market. Unlike we know what happens when there's a crisis, whether it's in the 60s, the 70s, alam natin yung galaw ng stock market, alam natin yung galaw ng bonds.
Now, what about variable life insurance or VUL? VUL is a kind of permanent life insurance policy with a built-in savings component that allows for the investment of the cash value. And Jonas says,
basically, yung variable funds na yan is very similar to mutual funds. So, if things are so good, okay sila. But right now, of course, they're just sidetracked and people invest in them because of the insurance component. So for those who can't invest in equities and the others and are comfortable na gusto nila may insurance component, then go ahead and add one. The risk is what if something happens to them? Yan yung kino-compensate nila. And this could actually be for people who have dangerous jobs. Kasi hindi mo mako-complete eh. Kaya ka bumibili ng may insurance.
In short, you may be better off with a straightforward insurance policy if you can't take the risk. Also, VULs in general are more expensive because of the management and broker fees. Jonas adds that investing in 2023 also means thinking ahead.
In the past 2.5 years, people started talking about ESG.
Environmental, social, and governance investing is a set of standards that socially conscious investors use.
All of these are fine, especially governance. Pero in light of the situation arising from the Ukraine-Russian conflict, and it seems that Russia is prepared to take this war longer, dapat i-introduce na natin yung bagong letter, yung letter R, which is resilience. We need to have business continuity plans, crisis management, enterprise risk. Kailangan i-prepare na natin. Tingnan mo yung nangyari sa airport.
At the end of the day, Jonas says there's no getting around it. Everyone needs to have a financial roadmap.
The one thing we've learned from the pandemic, uncertainty is the new normal. You should always plan. Having a investment portfolio that can help you during challenging times should be good. If people were just to do the same thing and think of their investments in 3 to 5 years' time, they'll make money. Ang problema lang natin is that we look at things very short term, meaning 3 months, di ba? So dapat we have to lengthen our horizon.
And that was today's episode of Teka Teka News. Again, I'm Franco Luna. This episode was edited by Nina Toralba and produced by Kat Ventura. If you like this episode, share it with a friend or two. And of course, don't forget to follow Teka Teka News and Puma Podcast wherever you listen. At para sa mga mahilig manood sa YouTube, Puma Podcast na rin po kami doon. Just search Puma Podcast and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for listening.